Hello, it's Lord Slar here, bringing you a review of the Big Finish box set called The First Doctor Adventures Volume 2. As you may have remembered, I reviewed Volume 1 when it released back in December, and was pleasantly surprised to find a much more accurate portrayal of the First Doctor than seen in the recent Christmas special, and happy to see a full cast major First Doctor release from Big Finish, continuing his much beloved adventures. To recap for those who haven't seen my review of it, I do really enjoy the new cast for the original TARDIS team. They're giving their own slightly different interpretations of the characters, and once you get used to them, you'll find yourselves immersed back in the First Doctor era. However, with that out of the way, let's review the two new stories this set contains. The Invention of Death was beyond anything I was really expecting after the last set. I mean, the last set was really good, but the stories were just a bit of fun rather than trying to be anything profound. But the Invention of Death switches it up a bit and plays with some very interesting ideas. As you might have guessed by the title, the story is about death. It's a topic we can all relate to, as the vast majority of us fear it greatly, and each of us have our own different ways of coping with it. What this story does with the concept, however, is to celebrate it. In the story, the planet they're on is inhabited by a race of creatures who do not die. They are immortal, and as such, they don't do anything. They take no interest in the world around them, no interest in learning or expanding or doing anything more than existing. What this is highlighting is the fact that the looming spectre of death over our lives is what drives us. We live for such a little time, we strive to do things, to leave our mark, and do our best to understand the world around us, in the hopes that the information we gain may prolong our lives, which it often does. Ultimately, the message of the story isn't that we shouldn't fear death, as when death is introduced to the aliens they conclude it is a bad thing. The message is in fact that while death may be feared, it should also be celebrated as what has pushed us as a species to achieve what we have. It is a rebuttal of the notion that immortality is something that should be strived for, as it leads to far less interesting lives than our own. It renders meaningless the concept of death, which is what really makes life interesting. A commodity is only valuable when it's in short supply, after all. I absolutely love this about the story, and it's something that has really resonated with me. John Dorney has to be one of the greatest Doctor Who writers ever. As for the rest of the story, it feels very much in the tradition of some of the early Hartnell stories. It moves at a lovely gentle pace, allowing us to get to know this strange and different alien species intimately, which is something I love, as I do enjoy getting to slow down and actually learn about these bizarre alien societies. The main characters here are great, and two of the alien supporting characters are very good too, getting a lot of development through the course of the story. I love the mystery that brews throughout the course of the story too. It has such a dark and macabre reveal of what's really happening and why it's happening, and it really makes sense when you start to think about it. It's very entertaining and very well thought out stuff. Overall, I absolutely loved this story. I had a little trouble getting into it initially, but by the end of part 2 I was absolutely sucked into this amazing world Dorney has created. This is some really superb Doctor Who. My only real complaint that it probably would have made the story a bit stronger if they'd developed another alien character, perhaps one of the more passive ones, to help emphasise the message of the story. But that's only really a nitpick in such a brilliant story. Any Hartnell fan, or any fan of science fiction in general, will love this. I give it a 9 out of 10. The Barbarians and the Samurai is a pure historical story, set in the early 19th century of Japan, before it opened up to the world and rapidly developed, and while it was still stuck in its feudal society. If you don't know, I'm a very big fan of the pure historical genre, and as a keen student of history, I love getting immersed in the world of the past, which this type of story allows. Andrew Smith certainly does not let down on this front, managing to immerse us in feudal Japan while giving us a tense, action-packed story to boot. The story is chock full of great characters, each of them with the purpose of giving us a little glimpse into the society of feudal Japan. Of course, the story mostly focuses on the samurai class, whereas most of Japan's population would have been peasants, but this isn't a historical analysis, it's just a bit of fun. There's a real sense of danger within the story, and that's what I always love about these historical stories, as the past was often a very dangerous place, but this is particularly the case in Japan, as with the daimyos having close to absolute power in their territory. I was genuinely worried some of the side characters I quite liked were going to get killed multiple times within the story, and they almost did. One thing I will say about the story, however, is that it comes across as just a bit functional. It plays it safe and doesn't do anything too experimental. This isn't really a big problem, it's just you're never going to be among the all-time greats by being standard and admittedly highly enjoyable. The acting in this story is great too. They found some very skilled Japanese actors, which you can imagine would be too easy for Big Finish to find in England. They really help sell the story, as they manage to act the part of the samurais extremely well and very convincingly. As I mentioned earlier, the characters are great and most of them are pretty three-dimensional, actually each showing they're not quite as what they seem by the end of the story, which is nice, and it certainly makes them more memorable than they might have been. Overall, The Barbarians and the Samurai is a great story. Fun action, immersive atmosphere, and very good characters. It does suffer from playing it a bit too safe, which I perhaps feel like a lot of Andrew Smith's scripts do, but he never fails to entertain, and this story certainly does that. I give it an 8 out of 10. To conclude, this is another brilliant Big Finish release. It's a must-have for fans of the First Doctor era like myself. I don't know if people who aren't that great of fans of the style taken by the Hartnell era will enjoy this quite as much as I did, but I still think it's quality Doctor Who, which is worth a try for most fans. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time in another video.